Hey guys, it's SchezzWho time. I want to shout out a couple of important things for the SchezzWho show, including the Dissent Agenda, a great podcast run by Melissa Lucasen and Cody Connor, whose their StreamYard account I piggyback on so I can bring you my show. I also want to shout out Mr. Farley Perkins at the Farley Perkins Agency, who has helped me with both home and auto insurance, and he can definitely help you too. Our good friend Miss Ellen runs Ellen's Home Style and Barbecue Express. She's got 2 locations in Virginia Beach and here in Portsmouth. So look Ellen's Home Style and Barbecue Express up for good dinner needs. And if you want a great dessert, there's also ELG Sweet Boutique right here on High Street in Portsmouth. Don't forget, my good friend Mr. Seiko Varner runs Positive Vibes Incorporated, who can help you with credit fixes, tax resolutions, lending private money. He can help you with a lot of things. He is also a great DJ if you need that in a pinch. And he also created the Hampton Roads Green Book, a great application to find Black-owned businesses in the Hampton Roads area. And the Black Swan podcast, otherwise known as the Black Swan Mindset, The Chronicles, which has a great Substack and a great podcast. Look them up, subscribe to them, follow them. They're run by the awesome and talented, lovely Andrea Dixon Chesviner, bringing you a lot of great topics over there at the Black Swan Mindset, The Chronicles. Now, joining SchezzWho tonight is a candidate in Virginia's Democratic primary for the 2nd District, Dr. Nila Devanath. Welcome to the show, Miss Devanath, as I click on the right thing now. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Conrad, for having me. Thanks to the SchezzWho community. I'm super excited to be here.
And I'm excited to have you on as well as we get to talk about the great thing that is politics in 2026. And I want to begin with your education in general, but from you too, the general education topic. First, you went to Pitt. You got your BA there in Pitt, and then you got your doctorate there from Pitt. You then went on to have a residency at Yale and got your Juris Doctorate, became a lawyer at Harvard. So not only you're a doctor, you're also a lawyer from prestigious schools. So please tell us, are your student loans killing you?
Oh my gosh, Conrad, they absolutely are. And just wanted to say hello again and kind of introduce myself as well. I'm Dr. Nila Devanath, who's running in the 2nd Congressional District, and I am a doctor and a lawyer. I'm also a Hampton Roads native. I was born in Pittsburgh, but I actually came here when I was 6 months old, and I have birthright citizenship. My parents immigrated here from Bangladesh over 40 years ago. And yeah, this has been my home ever since. District 2, basically raised here, I live here, and I serve here as a doctor in our community today. But yes, getting back to those student loans, I am absolutely dying under them. I have over $525,000 in student loans. I've been paying on them for over 10 years now. And it's incredible because throughout my life and work, as a doctor and then an attorney before that, I've already paid, I looked at it the other day, like $300,000, and there's still $525,000 to go. By the way, my total cost of tuition was not even close to that. So it was half that. A lot of it is just interest, right? And what a lot of students and former students are going through, folks that graduated, they're having families and just trying to get by in life, is that these interest rates on these loans are so high that sometimes student loan payments become an additional mortgage, right? We talk about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which is an amazing program. But as we know, the Trump administration right now is trying to dismantle the Department of Education. So anybody who's trying to get through, who's maybe completed their service in the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program and is trying to get their loans forgiven because they helped underserved areas and nonprofits, they can't get through because all the people working there are being essentially fired or transferred or moved other places. So there's like basically a gridlock of paperwork. it's insane, and
Yeah,
with my own debt, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'll finish paying it off when I'm 100. Like, I have no idea. I have no idea. Um, I just hope that, you know, all of us in this generation who are undergoing this know that there are folks that when we elect them to Congress, they can represent us on these issues, right? We can get the Department of Education back. We can solve student loan debt. But it also takes that experience knowing what it's doing to you and your family. Otherwise, people don't vote that way.
that's true. Um, would you wish to make education like yours easier for the students, say, first by making it free at point of service, and two, just ending student debt for those who came before?
I would. I would because I think we're at a student loan debt crisis in this country right now. I think just talking about my own loans, right? Like, is it even feasible for me to pay off those by the time I'm 100 years old? I don't know, right? The interest, this is the math problem about it. It's just the interest rates are so high. And we should, if there were student loans, they should be at cost, right? We shouldn't have to, um, when we're trying to better ourselves, better the community with the work that we're doing and the jobs that we're hoping to get with the education, why are we penalizing people, right? Um, to for what reason, right? Because it's not helping our economy, right? It's holding us back. In other countries, there are people who become doctors, right, and lawyers and stuff, and their education is free. Um, you know, my parents, even when they were coming over from Bangladesh, they were having to undergo the residency training here again. But their initial med school, when they were back there, it was free. And it's because that country understood that, hey, we need like critical, essential workers here. And we need to give them what they need to. And they served there for many, many years. Before coming to the United States for better opportunities because, they survived genocide in Bangladesh. They got to this country, and that's how I was the first person born here in my family.
Now, part of what your education hubbed around, what it's centered around, is something that's also very incredibly important for the United States society. It's the health system.
Mhm.
You're there as both an advocate to one who literally gives service in it. I'm a huge Medicare for All fan, and on your website, you do posit that you want universal health care with Medicare as an option for the rest of us. Just, could you break down a little bit what the basic differences as you understand them for socialized medicine, Medicare for all, and what our current system is?
Yes. So that's a great question. Our current system is a very piecemeal system, right? We have insurance for all these different categories. So if you're over 65, you get one thing. If you're under 65, you get another. If you're a veteran, you get something. If you're not a veteran, you get something else. If you're a kid, if you're employed or you're not employed. Because we have all of these moving parts, there's cracks, right? Anytime you have pieces of things, there's going to be cracks. And people are falling through the cracks right now, and that's what I'm seeing in the hospital is I work in the emergency rooms, hospital wards, and ICU. And that is where people end up when things have gone seriously wrong, right? Many of you have probably heard me, speak if you've seen me around town about like the most common patient that I see. So I used to work for the VA, but now I work in the community as a community hospital doctor. But still, about every other patient I see is a veteran or active duty or has some tie to our military community here. And the reason for that is because our VA system is so stressed, right? There's patients who might have some diabetes, a veteran who might have diabetes, they have a foot infection, but they couldn't go to see their doctor at the VA for 9 months. That was just the appointment time. So in the meanwhile, that infection got so bad that they got septic, right? That's why they ended up in the emergency room. The infection spread from their toe to their foot to their leg. And it's really heartbreaking because this happens every couple of months where I'm in the hospital and unfortunately I have to call a surgeon to cut off somebody's leg, right? This just happened just a couple of months ago when I was working in the hospital, and I got the report from the surgeon, and I was sitting at my desk, and he said, "Hey, we got the infection," and he sent me a picture in our system of the person's leg. And while I'm sitting there at my desk looking at this computer screen, just seeing a leg floating on a table, right? Like, what are we doing here? Right? This is wartime medicine. This is like we're amputating people, and we don't have to do this, right? If that person could have gotten care sooner, we wouldn't have ended up in this situation. And the reason I started running for Congress was because Jennifer Kiggans voted for the big ugly bill, right? That bill cut Medicaid in a very sneaky way, and it also made our insurance premiums go up. Our veteran community here, about 50% of them switch over to Medicaid to give them more options for healthcare in the community because the VA system is so stressed. So that hurts our community members, it hurts our families, and it also hurts our veteran community. So why would you vote for something like that when you yourself are a nurse practitioner, when you yourself take care of patients, when you yourself are a veteran? And this is CD2, right? We have a huge veteran and active duty community here. Why would you do that? And I just thought it was unconscionable, and I dusted off my old law degree, which you can see kind of up there somewhere. And I said, hey, I need to figure out how we can take a stand against this. I don't want to see another leg floating on a table.
And how would you would you understand the system to be now to where you want it to be?
Yes. And I didn't even answer the question about Medicare for all and universal healthcare. So I'll go into that, but thank you for reminding me. So what I want it to be and what I support is universal healthcare. That is where, our healthcare workers are a part of, basically it's almost like, it's like, I'll tell you what it's like. For our veterans who are in the VA system, they're essentially getting universal health care because it's from the government. Like doctors and nurses and all of these healthcare workers are hired by the government, and they're receiving that care essentially for free, which is amazing, right? Let's try to expand that to the rest of our families and the community, because if we can have that, that means nobody has to fall through the cracks, right? You go to these other countries that are westernized countries, like France or the UK, where they have this national health system. And you can go into the emergency room if something is going wrong, you're prioritized correctly. And when you get out, you don't have a $2,000 bill, right? Some people say, oh, well, there's all these cons. Yes, no system is perfect. But one of the biggest cons I hear is like, oh, well, they're waiting, months and months to get an appointment. We're already doing that. We're already waiting months and months to get an appointment right here. The difference is we're waiting months and months and we get a bill, right? They might be waiting months and months but they're being prioritized and triaged in the appropriate way. But when they actually get the care they need, it's not costing an arm and a leg. It's not bankrupting somebody so they have to potentially lose their home. That's the difference, right? That's universal healthcare. But there's also Medicare for all. That would give us basically an insurance option that would, allow us the same type of coverage with community providers as well. And I think for me personally, we just have to start somewhere, right? I think reversing the cuts that happened in the big ugly bill are important, right? Making sure that those insurance premiums go back, making sure Medicaid doesn't have those cuts. But that's not enough, right? Because even though healthcare has become worse because of the big ugly bill, it wasn't great before the big ugly bill, right? We need to take it a step further. And if we don't have anybody in Congress who is courageous enough to follow it, we'll never get there. If we never start, you're never going to finish, right? So that's kind of where I stand on that. I think we have to have something more bold. We have to go for the gold this time.
And I would also say that among healthcare, certain sections within it, things that are treated, such as reproductive health and the freedom therein, that's pretty damn important too. And you could be on the front lines to help codify something akin to Roe on a national level if you're in Congress. So, what are your views on reproductive freedom and your goals with it?
Yeah. So I'm pro-choice. I actually used to work for Planned Parenthood myself. I think that, people who are pregnant and women deserve autonomy with their bodies. They deserve to make decisions for their families in the privacy between themselves and their healthcare professionals. Um, if I was in Congress, I would absolutely pursue legislation that would codify Roe. Luckily, here in Virginia, by the way, in November, for everybody who's in here in Virginia, there will be an amendment to essentially enshrine the protections that we already have in Virginia, but just make it constitutional. And I think that's awesome. I encourage everybody to go vote in this primary, in the November elections, for the constitutional amendments. We need to make sure that things are secure, because what we're finding is on the federal level, especially with the politicization of the Supreme Court,
Hmm.
the protections we thought we had for almost 50 years are now being erased in many sectors, not just reproductive rights. I mean, look at voting rights as well, right? All of these things that we thought we had are now being eroded on the federal level. And so we need to enshrine them in legislation, because these court cases are overturning other things.
And I'd like to point out a nice comment from Andrea Dixon 8784, otherwise known as My Awesome Wife. I will say that the service at the Hampton VA Medical Center, at least for my dad, was far and above when he went to other hospitals. And he also had Medicare and Medicaid. So sometimes people might throw unwarranted criticisms toward the VA that that's also something on your website that you
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
help veterans a lot and expand better services, funding for the VA.
Yes, funding for the VA. And I absolutely love that comment, because everybody's experience is different. I'm speaking from the experience of seeing tens of at this point in my career, tens of thousands of people um, over my career, and the stories that they tell me and their experiences that have happened to them. So I know that the VA has really great care, because I used to work there and I have colleagues who have worked there, family members who have worked there as well. And I know the care is excellent, but sometimes it is stretched a little bit thin. And I mean, it's not just the veterans who are coming in with foot infections. I had
Mhm.
another patient just a couple of weeks ago, months ago, that he he came in because he was having a headache, and he tried to get an appointment at the VA several times, couldn't get one, ended up just coming to the emergency room. And what we found is that he had a brain tumor. Luckily we caught it. Um, and I wish that it had been caught sooner, but we caught it just in time. So everybody's experience is different. I think when care is provided at the VA, it's excellent. The question is, how often can it be provided, right? It's about the access to care, not the care itself. The quality is great.
And this is where you, hypothetically, on a debate stage, say, come October, against current Congresswoman Jennifer Kiggans, could say, and you literally help make it worse by voting for the big ugly bill, which
Mhm.
cut from the VA. And you literally have 18 points lobbed in your direction because it's accurate and people need to know in which way that hurt and which
Yes,
way you, being the alternative, would help fix it.
absolutely. 100%.
Now, I also want to mention, because you have recent experience with maternal health care, so you're going to have a deep
Yes, I do.
understanding of the issues with maternal health care, both on what you experience and what you know of it as a doctor as well, especially for healthcare for Black and Brown women who statistically face greater hurdles along that front than white women do. So, to echo the question, what would you do to address the issue of African American women and maternal death rates?
Well, thank you for that question, Conrad. So I actually helped support a bill in Congress, on Capitol Hill just a few years ago, that was talking about health disparities amongst minority patients, because we do experience different things than other patients do. Um, Maternal mortality, especially for Black mothers, is on the rise, and it has been over the last couple of years. I think what the medical system is missing is that there's not enough racial bias training. And, talk about experience, right? I just became a mom 4 months ago today. My baby is 4 months old, Krish. He is amazing. And I never thought this would happen to me. And I really haven't shared this that much, but my experience in the hospital was actually really unfortunate. You know, I was there. I'm a doctor, even in the system, right? And I was still, unfortunately mistreated, right? I was asking for things. I was asking for help. I wasn't really getting it in a timely manner. Um, the person who was there with bedside manner, treated me really differently. Unfortunately, it was a negative experience. And I thought to myself, how is this happening when I am even a physician here, you know? And, I don't want to break everything down into, race potentially, but I know that people are treated different depending on how they're perceived. And it was really strange to me how come I wasn't getting through in a system that I know so well. And I was on the patient side. And unfortunately, I was in labor for 29 hours. I was, um, pushing, for all the ladies out there who know, I was pushing for 6 hours. And that's not really normal. Normally people push for 2 or 4, and we were trying to get help and trying to understand why are we still here? Like, why haven't we called the doctor yet? Um, trying to understand why it had gone on for that long. And in the end, I ended up having an emergency C-section, which to me could have possibly been avoided if the care was better. And this is not just happening to me, right? It's happening to people all over. I have stories from even my friends who are also Black and brown, who have had their own children who had not great experiences in the hospital systems where they might have even worked. So we have to have, racial bias training. We have to put more funding and research towards these maternal death rates in minority communities. The funding has to be there as well, because we're not going to find any solutions if we don't actually look into the problem.
And I want to follow up in the sense that you just mentioned additional funding. And I know I live on a street right now where the end of it has a building that used to be the Up Center here in Portsmouth. And I took a Dads and Doulas course about a year or two back. It helped me learn about the concept of doulas and midwives. And as Andrea is asking again, what are your thoughts on midwives and doulas? And perhaps that could be where funding could go to. And another thing is that I remember from that class I took that the system seems to be at times unwarrantedly pushing C-sections. And
Yep.
I want to know your thoughts on that and what you might want to do to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that midwives and doulas are amazing. I wish that I had one myself. I had a lot of family members. I had my mom, who's a family doctor. I had my 2 sisters who are physicians. One's a pediatrician. And I had also my mother-in-law, who was a labor and delivery nurse. So I had a lot of help. So we didn't end up getting a midwife or doula, but I sometimes wish I had one, because I think that we could have advocated in a different way. And I think that some of that funding could go towards that, right? Because there's so many different ways that you can have a child, right? And we think about it in a very narrow way in medicine, like it has to be this way. I'm sure you've heard of the case about the C-section that occurred without permission, where that woman was, she was in labor and she had to go to court recently. I believe it was in
I don't think I
Florida.
have.
It was actually, I feel like it was a couple of months ago, but
Mhm.
essentially what happened was she was forced to have a C-section and had to literally sit through a court hearing while she was in labor. And
Hmm.
then they ultimately performed a C-section on her without her permission. Like, that's wild to me. That you cut into somebody's body
That
without
brings
their
that back
permission.
to reproductive freedom. She should have the freedom to make that decision,
Yes,
not have it
yes.
pushed upon her.
And the part about midwives and doulas is that, people have different training, right? Like when my mother, got her training in how to help during birthing in Bangladesh, there's something where it was called breech, right? Where the baby comes
Mhm.
in the opposite way instead of head first, it's like feet first. And here we're just automatically saying, oh, we need to do a C-section. My mother was trained in Bangladesh about how to actually deliver a baby in breech without surgical care. So there's so many different ways from so many different traditions and healing that we can use, but we're just biased in a certain way to go just down one narrow path, which isn't always recommended. And by the way, has many complications. You know, I couldn't walk for like 2 weeks
Mm.
after my C-section. I was literally stuck in one room, and my husband, who's amazing, my mom, my mother-in-law, everybody, my sister, everybody was helping me out. But like, it didn't necessarily have to be that way.
Now, you are endorsed by the Tidewater DSA, and I find that to be very cool. You're definitely more progressive than the former Democrat in the second district seat, Elaine Loria. I just looked at her website prior to doing the show, and she's only saying stuff like strengthening the ACA and supporting the strengthening of our border and stuff like that sort of gives me the willies because it sounds like a conservative in Democrats' clothing. I know she recently said even that Iran is an evil regime and recognizes the threat, which to me sounds like nothing but a dog whistle for supporting the Iran war if the president was simply Democrat. And I also noticed she didn't pay any concept to paid family leave on her website, and you do. So why is that needed?
Yeah, of course. Well, and just to talk about some of those differences as well, I think the primary is an amazing, amazing time to make your voice heard. I always hear from people in a general election saying, hey, unfortunately, I'm choosing between the lesser of two evils. So some people don't even go vote, right? But I always ask, instead of choosing between the lesser of two evils, did you vote in the primary? The primary is a chance where we don't just get to choose the lesser of two evils. You get to look at all of the candidates, and you actually get to pick a candidate that matches your values, right? I'll be clear that in this Democratic primary, whoever wins the primary is going to get the support of the National Party. But the question is now, to all of the voters out there, who do you want to represent you? Who do you think matches your values the best? And for me, there are some very key differences, I think, between me and the former Congresswoman. Um, First of all, I would say that I am not an APAC candidate. I never have accepted any money from APAC. I never will. I have also not accepted any money from any shadow donors for APAC. If any of y'all know what that is, it's basically donors who largely fund APAC, but sometimes they'll support other candidates as individuals, so it doesn't show up as APAC on that person's donor report. I don't accept money from anybody like that. And the reason I don't accept that money is because it is important that dark money and big money stays out of politics. Right now, it's on both sides of the aisle, right? People are buying, APAC is buying up politicians to keep us in this war with Iran. We are giving military supplies and aid to the military and government of Israel, which is committing genocide in Palestine. This is a humanitarian crisis, and we're not really addressing it. And those ties are even getting deeper, right? The National Defense Authorization Act, it was just about, it passed the House, right? Just a week or two ago. And luckily, it was blocked in the Senate. The reason that it was blocked was because there was a provision in there, which again, people are trying to slip under the radar in the public. There was a provision in there that said that basically our military would have unlimited integration with the military of and government of Israel. And I think that the last I checked, our military should support American citizens. I don't think that this war, we're not 100% clear why we're in it. We are sending our service members into harm's way. Here in Hampton Roads in District 2, right? We already sent people, and luckily they came back. But as you know, there were service members who were just killed in this war. And why are we sending people to potentially get killed when we don't even know, is this beneficial to American citizens? Is what we're doing right, right? We know that it's also affecting people at home, right? Gas prices are rising. It's making it harder to just live and transport ourselves from home to our jobs. We should not be in this war. That's why I don't accept any APAC money. I also want to point out a difference, which is I don't and never have accepted any corporate PAC money. I think that's important too, because, billionaires and corporations, they're taking advantage of working families. They are burning our planet. And, they're also in this nuclear, industrial kind of military complex where they're profiting off of genocide and wars like that. And I don't think that's okay either. So all of my support comes from the community. I'm fighting to end Citizens United. I'm part of the End Citizens United Unrig Washington campaign, which means I reject all corporate PAC money. I reject APAC money. I believe in term limits. And I also want to ban congressional stock trading for anybody in Congress plus their family members, right? Another difference between me and the former congressperson is that, I'm not a retired multimillionaire. I think that there are too many retired multimillionaires in Congress, right? When she went into Congress, her lifetime's net worth just doubled and almost tripled in 4 years. Imagine that. You've been working for almost 40 or 50 years. Your lifetime's wealth just doubles or triples in just a few years. That's amazing.
Yeah, she was already a business owner before
Right.
going into Congress.
Right.
She had some wealth, but while in Congress, her wealth happened to go up so much.
Yeah, it skyrocketed. And we have to ask why that's the case, right? And we have to look into those trades. And, we shouldn't, people at that level of power, they might say there's no insider trading, but there just is, right? They know things in advance of regular folks, right? If we even own stocks, by the way, because that's not common at all either, right? And so this is the thing, is that if you have that knowledge, even like a couple of seconds before somebody does with stock trades, right? It's all about timing. You can make immense amount of money, and that information didn't get to the regular voters. So I think that that's wrong. I also think that we need a perspective of somebody who's currently working. I'm the only person in this primary who is actively working, who has a job. And, I can't afford to campaign full time. Unlike all of my other opponents, I'm a young person. I understand the burdens that are facing this generation. And I think that we need that new perspective to make better decisions for the generations coming forward.
What I'd like to do now is share the screen with your own website and see if we can pick a little bit at some things we might not have touched on just yet.
Yeah, for sure.
We haven't touched on tax cuts for working families. Would you like to delve into that a little bit?
Yes. So this is amazing. I'm a doctor and I'm a lawyer. I know what I know, but I wanted to make sure that I learned more about what economic policies and tax policies could help for working families here in District 2. So probably not advised, but when my baby was a month old, I took my baby and my husband, and we all went up to DC, and I went to conferences. I spoke with congresspeople and senators, and I tried to find something that would work for all of us. And what I landed on, and what I'm putting my weight behind, is the Working Americans Tax Cut Act. So what this act does, it's currently in the House and Senate. What this act will do is give anybody who makes an income that's at the average cost of living, so that's around $45,000 to $50,000 a year, no federal income tax. That is huge, right? Because people are working paycheck to paycheck, 2, maybe 3 jobs, right? We're just trying to make ends meet because of the affordability crisis, and we need relief right now. I like this proposal because it gives immediate relief. There's some other proposals that are floating around, like Bernie Sanders' tax on billionaires, Elizabeth Warren's tax on multimillionaires. And those are great. We need to do that because we need to make them pay their fair share. However, it's going to take time to tax them and get the revenue and then put that into domestic programs. So, in the meanwhile, while we're building up that revenue source, let's give people immediate relief. So, that's kind of what I'm putting my weight behind. But there's other issues with affordability as well, right? We have our utilities going up, for instance. Virginia has the most data centers out of any state. 80% of internet traffic comes through Virginia. I basically say we are the internet. Virginia's the internet, you know? Um, and because we have so many data centers, it puts an immense pull on our electrical grid. That is why our utilities are going up, right? And they're trying to plop down these data centers so rapidly, like we can't even figure out what are the long-term effects, right? So, they're polluting the water. They are taking up farmland that we could use for literally food. And they're pulling this massive strain on our electrical grid. And they don't even really pay their fair share, right? They actually get tax cuts. What are we doing, right? Like, that should not be the case. And I think we should have a moratorium on data centers because of that. And I do think that we need to make them pay their fair share as well.
How about the concept of investing in rural communities and investing in clean energy? Which things would you like to invest in?
Yeah, so for rural communities, especially like right out here in Suffolk and Windsor and Smithfield, I do think, asking those data centers to purposefully put their investments into rural communities and rural hospitals and other networks would be the way to go, right? When we talk about paying their fair share, where does that money go? And I think it needs to go into these rural areas where these data centers are being plopped down. And then I think you had another part of your question, which I just missed.
I sort of brought in both the concept of rural investments and clean energy investments,
Yes.
and how you might want to either merge the two or just focus on different things therein within those topics. Both involve investing and how you want to do so.
Yeah. I think there should be more federal funding and grants towards clean energy. We look at, for instance, here in District 2 in Hampton Roads, the wind turbine project, right? That had been worked on for like 10 years. And then just because President Trump wanted to, he basically stopped that. So we saw all of those big parts of the wind turbines. I mean, you can see them when you're going over the bridge, right? And through the tunnel. They're just there. They're just sitting there. That would have brought in thousands of jobs to this area. And not only that, but it would have set us up with a solution for clean energy. We need those wind turbines. We need to have more clean energy jobs in this area because we are a coastline. We have so many issues with climate change. We need more flooding infrastructure. We need more barriers out at sea. We need more federal regulations when it comes to flood insurance for homes. There's so many different parts of this that we just need people in Congress right now to actually vote on and pass and protect basically us and our coastline.
Now, I do want to mention another comment from the feed about your thoughts on ranked choice voting.
Gotcha. And just explain that a little bit more to me because I want to make sure that I understand the question correctly.
Let's say you're in a primary with 4 people, and
Okay,
there's
gotcha.
one person that has a pretty big thought advantage going into, but maybe there's a lot of people who would otherwise vote if that person wasn't in there for someone and they choose them 2, or they choose them number 3 in an option like that. There's a certain amount of ranking to either one of those levels. And it's entirely possible that with enough of the accrued other levels, to get a better feel from the voting populace that there is a better candidate of the ones, even if it meant more second place and third place votes was added into it. So do you think that might help our Democratic primary process if you add in a little bit of ranked choice to it?
Yeah, I haven't done too much research into ranked choice voting, so I can't say for sure how that would all pan out. I guess my questions would be, if somebody was number 1 and they got a lot of votes and somebody was number 2 and they got more votes, how how would that work? I mean, I guess they would just, yeah, I haven't done the research into it, so I'm not really sure. But yeah, that could be an
Beforehand,
option to look at.
it's also how they choose the Heisman at the end of the college football season. Is it's not just who gets the most first place; it's an aggregate amount of points. Whoever got the most second, whoever got the most third, whoever got the most fourth, added all together, it's
Right.
entirely possible someone who can get the most first place votes, but with the second, third, and fourth, they might eke out a little bit more on top.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah,
Better
so it could
feel alive.
be almost more representative of what people think.
And
So
some say that we're a representative democracy. So
yeah, well, I mean, if that was the case, then I think that it could help. But
mhm.
honestly, I just have to look into it a little bit more. But that's a great question.
And it's also important to embrace politicians who are willing to admit, hey, I don't initially know that, and I'm going to go research it. I like that concept.
Listen, I'm a
So,
forever student, y'all. Okay, I'm a doctor and a lawyer, so
but
I just
at
love
some point,
learning.
you don't
And
need another doctor because
no,
you're
no.
never going to pay those student loans off.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm not the type of person to say that I know everything. I don't. I mean, that's the reason I went to DC to figure out like what are these tax policies? What are people talking about? Like I wanted to get that in-person experience, not just necessarily read things online, right? But if there's ever a question that I don't know about, I like to do my research, and I also like to tell people, "Hey, I don't know," because I think that's important that folks know that too.
It humanizes you, and it removes the aspect of it provides some humility, makes people feel more human, and I like that. I think people will like that too. I'm going to bring your website back up here toward the bottom because I think many different topics have been brought up even organically, so I will skip a lot of them. But I do like that number 17 there about abolishing ICE, and I like to let you just have a full rundown as to your stance on ICE,
Mhm.
the fact that it only has existed since 2003, and the abuses that we're seeing right now, and
Yes.
whether or not it's better than what I will admit some Democrats say, just reforming it as opposed to abolishing it outright. So just give the
Yeah,
whole rundown.
of course. So, um, you know, if any of you have seen the gentleman in northern Suffolk, you've probably seen the video of him being, tackled and assaulted by members of ICE. That happened in my neighborhood. That was literally 5 minutes from my house. I was at the ICE protest, just I think a week or two ago, where there were literally hundreds of people across Hampton Roads that came out to protest. And what that tells me is that our community is fed up, right? We're fed up with ICE agents who are committing abuses on people who are in our community who are working very hard, who are our neighbors, who are our friends, sometimes our family members, who are, some people who have been here for decades who are paying taxes, right? We don't want anybody in our community treated this way. Um, and we've seen around the country, it's not just affecting people who have immigrated here, who might be undocumented. It's also affecting American citizens. American citizens have been killed.
Mhm.
ICE has gone too far, right? This program, this institution, it needs to be abolished. And what I mean by that is needs to be dissolved, right? There's the training. I mean, at minimum, I've heard 2 weeks. People don't know how to handle, people who are immigrants or coming in with care and concern and clarity if you have 2 weeks of training. That's a very complicated issue. 2 weeks is not enough. People should really be trained, in my opinion, for a whole year, right? In order to understand the various, competing factors when somebody is here for whatever reason they are. I think we need a pathway towards citizenship. I was one of the first people to lobby for the DREAM Act way back when. And the reason I did that was because, I come from an immigrant family. We understand uh, what it means to want to become an American citizen, to want to live here and work here and raise your family here. And the pathway is really hard. My parents had to fight for their citizenship, right? Luckily, I have birthright citizenship. All I had to do was be born. But for my family members, I'm the first one. It wasn't always that way. And when I was, fighting for the Dream Act, over a decade ago, there was another friend of mine who was also, his parents were from Bangladesh, just like me. He had been here, throughout his whole life, just like me. The only difference was that his parents actually didn't do the paperwork for whatever reason. I don't know if they were juggling 3 jobs or just trying to make by, whatever was happening in their lives. And he didn't know this. He actually found out when he was applying to college. So, he's 17, 18, applying to college, applying to scholarships, and they're asking, "Hey, turn in all these papers, your all these birth certificate, whatever." And he's asking his parents, he's like, "Hey, I have to like turn in all this stuff for to apply for the loans and whatever." Um, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we don't have that." And he was like, "What do you mean?" So he'd come there when he was 2, but he didn't know. And he thought his whole life, growing up 17 years, 18 years, that he was just a born American citizen and no clue that he was an immigrant. Then he finds out, which by the way, he's lived here his entire life. He's an American by all other standards, right? And now he's finding out that, oh my goodness, what do I do? Right? Those are the people that the Dream Act would help, right? Is you have a pathway towards citizenship. Either you're a student, you're working, or you're in the military, and you can get citizenship in that way. It provides a safer option for people who really want to be here and give back to our nationwide community. ICE needs to be rebuilt, right? It has to be dissolved, it has to be abolished, and then it has to be rebuilt in a way that is consistent with human dignity. We have to have a fair and humane immigration system.
Unless we forget that the current president tried once and failed with the Supreme Court to remove birthright citizenship and is trying to go again with trying to remove birthright citizenship.
This is crazy, right? This is something that is enshrined in our Constitution, right? So the fact that he's trying to remove it, like, let's be real, this is about race. I have to say it because that's just what it is, right? It is trying to remove birthright citizenship for people who are coming from across the world, who are of many, many different races. And I don't think that that's right, right? We have birthright citizenship, by the way, is a concept that has been around for hundreds, if not, 1,000 years, right? Our our system is built on the English system of common law, and they had birthright citizenship, right? So this is something that has been around for a very long time, hundreds of years, and it's how many countries around the world, if not most, actually have their citizenship structure as well. So the fact that we're trying to eliminate it, like, we have to think about why that is, and it's not for the reasons that you think.
I also want to delve a little bit because it began with Abolish ICE, which I did a video recently where I accused them of thinking that they were cops when they were not. And a lot of people said, well, they are cops. And this gets me to also thinking about the fact that we have state cops and local cops as well. And there is a reform that could be needed within policing as a concept in the United States. And the George Floyd Policing Act was not passed when Biden was president. So would you like to take another crack at that if you're in
Yeah,
Congress?
absolutely. I would absolutely take another crack at that because I think that our law enforcement needs accountability, right? We need to eliminate chokeholds. We need to make sure there's transparency. We need to make sure everybody's wearing their camera and it's turned on. I don't think that we should have this immunity also when, law enforcement, whether it's local, whether it's state, whether it's federal, commit crimes against our own citizens and other human beings. We can't let people get away with murder, right? We can't let people get away with assault just because of the position they are in. That's not okay. We need those reforms. And if I was in Congress, I would absolutely bring back that act and hopefully get it passed.
Would you do the same with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act?
Yep, 100%. So With the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, we would restore the Voting Rights Act to its former protections, the ones that were just gutted by the Supreme Court, and maybe even go a little bit further than that as well. We need that right now, right? We live in a really historic time. The Voting Rights Act was gutted, right? We're seeing all of these majority minority districts across the country that are being redistricted. And again, it's the ugly face of racism that is coming up. One of the things that I was researching, and I didn't even know this necessarily about the district. I started running because of my patients. I started running because of the community. But when I was doing the research about what is the makeup of Congress, right? We do not have enough minority representation in Congress. It doesn't reflect American society. There are not enough Black and brown voices there. And because of that, that is why we have all of these attacks on these voting rights, right? Look at District 2. District 2 has existed for 237 years here in Virginia. Not one time has there been a person of color to represent this place. And we are about 50%. So think about that. Not one time in 237 years has a new perspective been shown. That's wild, right? It's 2026, y'all. That barrier hasn't been broken here. And I'm running to hopefully make history.
Yeah. You could be the one who breaks that within the next few months.
We're trying. We're out here, and what I say to folks, if you're excited and you're energized, by what you're hearing, please go on my website, look at the policies, look at come out to an event. If you want to help, we got 2 weeks before this primary, and I'm also asking you for your help, right? Mm-hmm. I need volunteers to help us canvass, to help us phone bank, to just get out there in the community and tell their friends and family, their church, their temple, their coworkers, because everything that I'm doing is community-based and community funded. My team is essentially close to 100% volunteer at this point. And we need your support because, I'm not taking the corporate PAC money. I'm not taking APAC money. So we want to show that a community voice can actually make it even against that big money establishment.
And in most senses, that would kind of be like the last reason why voters in the second district should look for you in the primary and in the general a little later. So perhaps that'll be your version of summing it up there. But I do want to ask one more topic-based thing, if I could, because it's very similar to what we were just talking about, the racial history of the United States. And again, asked, what are your thoughts and what would you possibly want to do about the Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History, which is an executive order, 14253. It directed the Interior Department to review sites like Philly. What would you want to do about that? What would you want to learn and be a congressional voice on the topic?
Yeah. So I think that executive order is awful, right? Because what it's doing is it's pretending to review things, but in actuality, what it's trying to do is erase the history of racial conflict in this country, right? I mean, think about it this way. Race is unfortunately part of American history. We have it in the Constitution, right? Black citizens were only considered 3/5 of a person. That's in our Constitution. That's not okay in any way, but we have to understand history or we are doomed to repeat it. And I think that this executive order is really just trying to go around pretending like it didn't happen, pretending like slavery didn't happen, pretending like discrimination didn't happen. And that's not okay because it erases the hardships that people have gone through, their families and ancestors have gone through to get here to where we are today. We need to remember these things so that we don't go backwards. And right now we are going backwards.
And I want all the viewers of SchezzWho to remember those words and the previous words of the past 50 or so minutes. And I do want to thank Dr. Nila Devanath and lawyer Dr. Nila Devanath for coming on SchezzWho to talk about not only her campaign, but her thoughts on various politics and even things she wants to learn because she's always a curious person. I want to thank you again. And any last parting words before we head on off?
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you so much, Conrad, for your questions, and thank you to all of the SchezzWho family out there who are asking great questions. Please come and check us out. Come and support us. We have a lot of events coming up, canvassing events. I want to let everyone know that early voting for the primary has already begun, and we actually have this weekend coming up. Actually, both Saturday and Sunday, you can actually vote early as well. We have plenty of volunteer opportunities. Please check me out at our website, nilaforcongress.com. So that's NILAFOR, congress.com. And hopefully I'll see you at the polls.
Indeed. Thank you, Doctor. I'll catch you next time.
All right. Thanks.
You have a great night. And this has been another awesome SchezzWho show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for asking questions. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, and comment. And importantly, also have a great night. I'll see you next time.